Welcome back to another class on the Treasures of Mishnayot. We are in Mishnayot of Berachot, Perek Vav, Mishnah Hey. This will be part 3 of the Shi'ur. In part 2 of the Shi'ur, we saw that if one blessed on the wine before the meal, that blessing will exempt the wine after the meal, but before Birkat HaMazon, meaning the situation is before Birkat HaMazon. And then we explained, when was this taught? When was this taught? That's only on Shabbat and Yom Tov. However, throughout the other days of the year, when he's not accustomed to drinking wine after the meal, we're going to tell him to go back and bless another blessing of Borei Pri Gefen. Comes out when it comes to the wine business, when are we going to allow you to use the blessing of the wine that you blessed before the meal, that it should also help you after the meal, that is specifically on Shabbat and Yom Tov? We went through this in part 2 of the Shi'ur. However, in other days of the year, like Sunday, Monday, just you want to go ahead and drink wine, since you're that type of person that is not accustomed to drinking wine after the meal, we're going to tell you the blessing that you blessed before the meal will not carry over to the wine after the meal, and we're going to tell you have to go back and bless another blessing of Borei Pri Gefen. Now we want to move on to part 2 from the Shi'ur in the Mishna. Remember, we're going to have parts in the Mishnah that we're doing. Yesterday's class was part 1. Now we're seeing part 2. So it begins like this. Perek al appetizers shelefnei hamazon. If one blessed on appetizers before the meal, you exempts the appetizers after the meal. Now I want to just try to explain to you what's going on over here. A person will see what appetizers are, but if a person blessed on an appetizer before the meal, and then he went ahead and he washed his hands for bread, excuse me, and now he sat down to have a bread meal. Now he finished the bread meal. He removed everything that was in the bread meal. Everything is gone. Now he sat down and he wants to continue eating the appetizers that he began eating before the bread meal. We're going to tell you he does not have to bless on them. Remember one more time. Blessed on appetizers before the meal, meaning before the bread. Then you went ahead and you washed your hands for the bread meal. And now you're having the bread meal. We're going to tell you it exempts the appetizers after the meal. After you have finished completely the meal, they've removed everything that you were eating during the meal. Now they wanted to bring you the appetizers. This blessing that you blessed on the appetizer before the meal, it exempts the appetizers after the meal. Now the guide is going to go on to explain what is a parperet. What is an appetizer? So he goes like this and he says, so let's do the Mishnah one more time. If one blessed on an appetizer before the meal, you exempt the appetizer after the meal. Comes the Kajan, he says like this. Any food that one is accustomed to accompany it with the bread. So I wrote over here, what is a parperet? How do we define a parperet? Okay, I said it in short, that's an appetizer. So comes the Kajan explains to us, what is a parperet? So he says, any food that one is accustomed to accompanying the bread with. For example, he's going to say now, vegetables, fish, meat, cooked foods, etc. All these things are considered to be parperet. Now, listen to this very carefully. Let's say a person was eating a cucumber before he began the bread meal. He sat down, he had cucumber, tomatoes, salads, whatever, and he said Borei Pri Adama on it. Now, his wife made him a sandwich. So he got up, he went ahead and he washed his hands for the bread, and he said, after he finished his whole sandwich, he wants to continue, that's it, his meal is over. He wants to continue now eating his cucumber, tomato, whatever he was eating. Does he have to go back and bless again or not? So that's what we're speaking about over here. That if you bless on appetizers, I don't care what it is, fish, meat, cooked foods. Some today people have jerky today as a appetizer. Anything about that, if you bless on the appetizer before the meal, it exempts the appetizers after the meal. Alright, so let's see this inside. Kol ma'achal sherigalin lalevet bo et hapat, any food that one is accustomed to accompany the bread with, kigon, for example, yirakot, vegetables, dagim, fish, basar, meat, minei tavshel v'chedume, all types of cooked dishes, etc., and similar things to the cooked foods. Karui parperet, it's called parperet. It's called an appetizer. All of these things are called appetizers. He brings it down in the name of the Rabbi Vadim Bartanura. Now, this is one way to understand what a parperet is. Okay, now we want to just see something else now. Okay, we're still in the cut, so I won't make it another part. So he continues, he's like this. V'yesh shochlim parperet lefnei hamazon l'shem girui hate'avon. He says, the Kahati says, do you know why people eat parperet before the meal? Here we go. Some eat parperet before the meal to stimulate their appetite. That's why they eat it. So therefore, when you are blessing on an appetizer before the meal, since it's opening up your appetite for the meal, therefore after you finish the meal, when you're going to go ahead and continue eating the appetizers after the meal, the blessing that you blessed and the appetizers before the meal, it will exempt the appetizers after the meal. But remember, it's always before Birkat Hamazon, okay? Because once it's after Birkat Hamazon, you have to say another bracha. So that's what the Kahati is telling us over here. V'yesh she'ochlim parperet lefnei hamazon, and you have some people that they eat parperet before the meal. Why? L'shem, for the sake of girui hate'avon, for the sake of stimulating their appetite. They want to, by eating vegetables, is going to open up their appetite. V'chen gam la'achar hamazon, so too after the meal they also eat appetizers. Why? L'shem kinuach seuda, for the sake of a dessert. They eat the appetizer as a dessert, ke'en liftin, as a like something which accompanies the bread. Again, same thing in Rabotai. So we see from over here, why do people eat parperet before the meal? In order to stimulate the appetite, to open up their appetite. Why do people eat appetizers after the meal? They would eat it as a dessert. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next part. We're still in the same topic of parperet, but how do we define parperet? That's one way to understand parperet. But there's also another way to understand parperet. Okay, so you know something? Let me just read this for you guys. I don't know if I read it. Let me just read it, because it's very important to have this down. Let me just read it. Some eat parperet before the meal to stimulate their appetite. So too, some eat parperet after the meal as a dessert. Okay, we said it. I just wanted to read it because I wrote it. Now, the Kahati is going to explain that many want to explain what is a parperet. It's not like what we just explained. Some want to learn parperet is something else altogether. So let me just tell you now, and then we'll move on to the Kahati. Many explain parperet is a type of bread that we bless on it borei minei mizanot. For example, dry crumbs that were cooked in a soup bowl, thin crackers, which I put over here as an example, see, like biscuits, etc. So parperet, according to them, could be thin crackers like biscuits and things like that, or even pieces of bread where you cook them in a hot dish, like in a soup bowl. If you went and you cook them on these things, you bless borei minei mizanot. So that could also mean parperet. Now, what is the difference? Because if a person went ahead and he blessed on the parperet, if we're going to learn right now, the parperet is the bread which was cooked in a soup, or we're going to learn on biscuit. If a person went ahead and he said, let's say, bring me a name is not on a biscuit before the meal, and then he went and he washed his hands for the bread meal, then he finished his bread meal, but he still didn't say Birkat Hamazon. Now he wants to continue eating the biscuit. We're going to tell him you don't have to bless Borei Minei Mizanot. Why? Because when you blessed Borei Minei Mizanot on the biscuit prior to the meal, it's going to exempt the biscuit after the meal. Okay, so that's what we're seeing over here. We're seeing that appetizers can mean two things. Appetizers can actually mean vegetable, fish, meat, cooked dishes, or we can see parper literally means it's a type of bread that we bless on Borei Minei Mizanot. So meaning anything which is blessed, anything that you bless Borei Minei Mizanot on, that is also parper, but it has to be a bread. It's a type of bread. Okay. So let's continue back into the Kahati. So he says like this, V'rabim mifarshim, and many explain, Sheparperet hi pat shemevarechim alecha Borei Minei Mizanot. Parperet is a type of bread that we bless on it Borei Minei Mizanot. Kigon, for example, pirurim yivashim, dried pieces, shedid bashlu bikarat hamarak. They were cooked in a soup bowl, or rikikim dakim, or thin wafers, ke'en biskvitim v'chodumeh, like biscuits and things similar to that, like I explained to you over here. Mikol makom, nevertheless, ba mishatenu l'lamed, comes our missions to teach us, sha'ochel parperet lefnei hasuda, if one is going to go ahead and he's going to eat the parperet before the meal, u'mevarech alech, and he's going to go ahead and he's going to bless on it. Eino tzarich levarech shuv ala parperet hamugeshet lo la'acher hasuda. He doesn't have to go back and bless on the parperet that's going to be served to him after the meal. Kodem Birkat Hamazon, where he's still before Birkat Hamazon. Why does he have to bless? Shekvar niftar bebracha sheberech lefnei hasuda. Because you already took out the parperet after the meal with the blessing that you bless on the parperet before the meal. Rabotai, now we're going to move on. I'm going to make another shiur for this. We're going to go to see part number 3 now over here. Right? Again, this is a different piece. This will be part number 3 in the Mishnah, okay? We'll do that in the following class only because I want to be able to break down each one separately. All right, in any event, we saw today if a person blesses on appetizers before the meal, it exempts the appetizers after the meal. So we have 2 ways to understand what is a parperet. So one way we said is any food that one is accustomed to accompany the bread with, for example, vegetables, fish, meat, cooked foods, etc. And then we said some eat parperet before the meal. Why? To stimulate their appetite, to open up the appetite. So too, some eat parperet after the meal. Why? As a dessert. So it doesn't matter, Botai, whether you're eating it for dessert or for stimulating the appetite. Bottom line is, when you're blessing on the appetizers before the meal, it's gonna exempt the appetizers after the meal. But we see over here that according to this opinion, appetizers mean vegetable, fish, meat, cooked foods, etc. However, many want to explain what is a parperet. Many want to explain that parperet is a type of bread that we bless on it Borei Minei Mizanot. For example, dry crumbs that were cooked in a soup bowl, or thin crackers like biscuits, etc. So Rabotai, we're going to conclude over here and we'll continue.